Good morning. Welcome to Pinnacle Perspective. My name is Neerav Parikh, and today we have a special guest on, Betsy Elliott, who is the founder and owner of Walker Elliott. And today's topic, we'll be talking about how to motivate employees. So I would love to welcome Betsy Elliott. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm doing good, Neerav. Appreciate you having me on here.
Absolutely. No, we're very excited to have you. And, as I've mentioned to you in the past, with Nina and Marianne, who are also Pinnacle members that work with you as well, we think you would make a great guest. And we're so happy to have you on today and look forward to chatting with you.
Great. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. So let's jump right into it. Let's talk about early on when you first became a manager. Tell us early in your career, what we know early in your career you were promoted, and what was that transition like from going from an individual producer to now managing a team?
Well, I was young. It was a little overwhelming. It was intimidating. But the way we were trained in those days was to, when you move to a supervisor, to really think of those new hires as extensions of your desk. So we really almost trained them like recruiters today would have a research team. So I would train them by having them recruit on my jobs. If they got a great candidate, I would market their candidate. So in a lot of ways, it really made me a much better recruiter to be a manager. I had to learn a little bit about time management, but overall, the way that we were trained was to bring those new rookies on and work them into our desk and our search assignments as much as possible. So while it was a transition, I think it really overall helped me in the long run be a much better recruiter.
Sure, I can understand that. And I'm sure it had to have been obviously very challenging from going from somebody who just managed herself to taking on a team and being responsible for their production and even a bottom line. How challenging was it to go from being an individual producer to managing a team that is expected to produce?
Well, it was, and we were profit partners. And so really we had a whole full P&L. It was like taking a crash MBA course overnight. So I will tell you it was challenging, but I thrived on it. I loved bringing new people in. I loved mentoring them. It made me more of a student of the numbers. I know you know me as really somebody who's very numbers oriented, but when it was just my own desk, it was easy to stray from the numbers at times. But when I managed people and I really wanted to see them succeed, that was probably the first time that I fully embraced the numbers and the stats. Again, time management was a challenge, and after 30 years, I'll have to admit it's still a challenge from time to time management. But I loved watching new people come in and succeed. It made me more passionate about the things that are really cornerstone in my career. So I think it really, in the end, it helped quite a bit.
Do you remember when you went into recruiting, was management something that was on your insight for you, or was it something that was described like this is the progression in your career? Like, what do you remember when you first started? Was that even on the radar?
So absolutely. So I started recruiting before I graduated. I had to actually take off to go to graduation, and I had interviewed with about 4 recruiting firms, and I had offers from several. A couple of them said, "You're going to sit at that desk and you're going to die at that desk, but you'll make a lot of money at that desk." But we've grown and we've expanded once, and we don't plan to do it again. The firm I joined as a rookie, they really were all about, we're training, we're growing, something exciting is going on. They were about a 4-year-old company when I joined them, and they sold the dream. And so I was a kid. I was really on board with the dream. I had no idea what management entailed, but it sounded good to me. And I knew I wanted to join a place where there was opportunity for growth. So yes, actually strategically, I made the decision. The other one was offering a base salary, and the people I joined, no salary, no advance, no insurance, no anything. Basically, you could sit at that desk, but it was build it, and you could have a dream. So really, I really bought into that as a rookie.
That's great, and it's clearly paid off. It's like
no regrets.
Great return, right?
Yes.
Very good. And so going back to when you first became a manager, I can imagine that there was a lot of daily reflection on how the day went. What steps did you take to make sure that the next day was better?
So in those days, we didn't have computers. We didn't have Insight Squared and these wonderful dashboards with all the analytics, but I was still a numbers person. So I really spent a lot of time every day analyzing our numbers. How many calls did we make? How many interviews did we have? And really trying to figure out what we needed to do to be a success. And I always have found great comfort in the numbers. I've worked in a lot of downturns, and so I would do that kind of reflection. I would do hand audits. I would go through and look at all the jobs. I would have everybody put all their candidate applications on the desk, and I would look at that. Lots of times really trying to audit the quality and the quantity of what we would do. Needless to say, for the first 5 years, I worked a lot of hours because I still did my own desk. So in those days, it was like an 80-hour work week to keep on top of your own production and your management of things. But I always was one of those that was trying to dig just beyond the placements on the board and what did we have to do to keep the placements coming in, not just that month, but the month after and the month after.
It's kind of interesting that you mentioned that you work almost like 80 hours, because all I've ever heard in my 10 years with you is your philosophy has now been not to work harder, but work smarter.
Yes.
How did that come about for you?
Well, you know, you've also heard me say life is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And that I think way too many of the baby boomers worked their first 5 or 6 years as it was a sprint. I'm going to give it all, and I'm going to give, you know, lots of hours, and there wasn't a lot of balance. And so as a result, I saw a lot of really amazing producers burn out after 2 to 3 years, and they left the business. And I've kept in touch with so many of them, and they reflect back on how once I was a successful recruiter and I couldn't find balance. So my goal is for people to have a better balanced life. I mean, what are we working for? Just more money? Are we working for our families? Are we working for that quality of life outside of work? And I think if you're a student of the numbers, you can find that balance where you don't have to work 80 hours a week. And also some people here, Marianne and Nina, were wonderful. They really showed me. They came in with track shoes on. They came in running. They didn't work a lot of hours, but when they came in, they were intense and they were focused. And that's really a better way to be than endless hours in the office.
Right. And it is amazing because I am fortunate to get to work next to both of them. And from where they were as probably single women are now mothers, wives, and they've probably even reduced their hours even more and know how to put more into the day. And they're probably doing better than they did 10, 12 years ago. So I think they've really adopted a philosophy that you probably learned later in your career.
Yes, I stood up at a NAPS meeting one time when a bunch of baby boomers in a management class at a NAPS meeting were complaining about all the people that don't want to work. And I said, I'm telling you, I'd rather have these people on my team that work 36 hours a week with passion than a whole room full of baby boomers that are spending 80 hours a week but not focused work effort, just kind of showing up and spending hours. So yes, they really brought me along in that respect.
That's excellent. And so I've been with you for almost 10 years and appreciate the management style. But, you know, I've certainly heard that there was a different kind of Betsy Elliott prior to Walker Elliott.
Yeah.
So tell us a little about that and what shifted when you started the firm.
So it was really Betsy Elliott in her 20s as a young manager. I really started letting that go in my 30s. So a couple of things. I was a micromanager as a new person, but I found that really the emphasis was then that I wanted the success more than they wanted the success, and that I was really trying to pull people along. And somewhere along the line, I had to realize that for me to be sustaining in this business, I had to hire people that wanted to succeed, that would come to me, that could self-manage and self-direct, and that they really just wanted mentoring. So one is just a fundamental shift about what management was. It's really to be mentoring and not controlling. So that was a big thing. Two, as you know, I have 3 children. And so at a certain amount of time, I had to decide I have children at home and not at work. And that was what I started saying in the 30s, when I was in my 30s as management, is that I had made a decision. I wasn't going to have children at work. And if that didn't fit them, then they needed to go seek work elsewhere.
Right. And so what's quite remarkable, and you don't hear this from a lot of businesses that start up in their first year, you were profitable immediately in your first year. What do you recall about that? And what do you think was done differently that maybe other businesses could learn from that?
Well, one thing that was helpful is that the company that I worked with before, I was a profit partner. So I was used to managing a P&L. I was used to really looking at the cost structures, and I had a pretty good instinct after that many years of what it took. But several things in the recruiting business you have to make sure that you manage your cash flow, you watch your advances and salaries, that you work on not just rejoicing about the placements on the board, but you're watching the numbers so that the pipeline is coming in. You have to do that. And then we were really fortunate. Houston's a great city. It's very entrepreneurial. Everybody loves the new guy. And our oil and gas clients, I'm telling you, they paid us immediately. We had clients paying us 2 weeks upon receipt of invoice because they knew we were a startup. So I appreciate that. And then also the business community. They took us seriously. I had a great caliber team that started with me. The banks took us seriously. Everybody was really, I have to say, there's a lot to love about Houston, and they love an entrepreneur. All of that helped.
Right, right. And I must say that one of the characteristics that you've carried in 10 years that I've been with you that I admire most is that you have been consistent emotionally, the way that you motivate and the way that you lead your team. But I'm sure there's some sort of mental preparation that goes in every day before you show up or every night before you go to bed that you think about. Walk us through that. How is it that you were able to stay so consistent despite what may be going on professionally or personally and still know that you're going to lead a team?
So early in my career, and I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I worked with a group of people that, you would see a lot of turnover in the company. And people, I would watch that they would start going down a negative rabbit hole and they couldn't bring themselves back. And they would leave sometimes right before success was there. That's what we don't always know in the recruiting. Success is sometimes just around the corner. So one, I work very hard to not go down a negative rabbit hole. I try not to feed that. I have to live in optimism every day, which is what I do. So I work on it. It's like working out. I really try and read positive things. I watch the numbers. I look for the things that I can control, and that really helps. Anytime I'm feeling a sense of out of control, I always dig back into the numbers and say, okay, what is it we can fix? And that goes a long way, not 100% of the way. And then I have a great team. You come in this room and you work with this team, it inspires me. And so that I really give it my extra effort because I'm inspired by my team. It really helps.
Right. It does help. I mean, because though there are many recruiters that do this job as a solo desk, I think that the fact that you have kept it as a collaborative effort has really probably given leaps and bounds and taken this company to a whole other level.
I think it really helps, the collaborative, because there's always something we can work on. There's always somebody that can hand something over, and I think that really helps keep the positive momentum going.
Excellent. And so now you have 3 Pinnacle members that work at Walker Elliott. And what did you notice differently in them, including myself? And how did you specifically guide them to achieve the milestones that they have?
Well, each one of you guys has a little bit different personality and a focus and strengths and weaknesses. But what all of you have is a high energy, you have strong ethics, you have a strong work ethic, and you're willing to do that. And the other thing that you all have in common is really a trust, a willingness to break away. Typically, salespeople say, I just want to close this one big deal, and I'm going to go do that, and they chase the big deal. All 3 of you are really students of the business, and you all come to me and say, what do I have to do? How do I analyze the numbers? What do I do? And you step out in faith and you're willing to follow a process, which I think really helps. Top producers don't always know. I think of things as like piers sticking down, strong foundations. And we don't always understand that some of our foundation may be crumbling. Maybe I haven't been making as many business development calls while I've been over here closing these deals, or maybe my recruiting calls, maybe these numbers. The thing that you all 3 have in common is that when those things are pointed out, you're always very quick to course correct and to change so that you can keep your momentum going. You never just kind of step back and rest on your laurels with a few deals on the board. You're really willing to do that. I think those are key things in being a long-term success and not just a short-term few big deal success.
And I know that doesn't necessarily mean that it's easier to motivate somebody who has that characteristic trait, because not everyone's going to be the same and are motivated differently. So when you look at your team, how do you go about motivating each employee knowing that everyone is different?
Well, yes, and that's the million-dollar question. It's very hard, and it's a delicate balance, and it's very hard to get it right, because sometimes you need to push, sometimes you need to stand alongside and mentor, and sometimes recruiters are like teenagers. They just need to vent, and they don't really want you to jump in there and solve it. They just need to to know that they're not the only one that feels that way today. So it's very, I mean, I think it's you have to be in the trenches. I always try and stay close to my desk. I stay in the trenches so I have an idea of what you guys are dealing with in the marketplace. I've always chosen to not remove myself from the desk, and I think that really helps, because if you're seeing something in the market, I've probably already seen it, and that I think is a big thing in trying to make sure that you can stay on top of mentoring. And also the message. I know Mary Ann has said one of the things that she likes is that she knows I'm out there working a desk, just like you guys are. I think that helps with a little bit of credibility. I think if you stay away from the desk for too many years, it's hard to continue to have a credible voice with your top producers.
All right, I do agree with that. And you were leading by example and not just speaking about past examples. And I think that your team, and including myself, we really admire that. Now, when we're talking about motivation, not that, everyone is going to produce the same. What steps have you taken to maybe course correct when an underperforming employee does not respond favorably to, say, several attempts?
Well, I always go back and, as you know, I look at the numbers. Is it a quality issue? Is it a quantity issue? Or is it a work ethic issue? Oftentimes it is. Maybe they've gotten lost and they've gotten too much quantity and not enough quality. And so we can go back in and course correct that. Sometimes it started slipping weeks ago, and we have to go back and look and see where they are on that. But there are times that you have to go through the steps. You have to go through and do a written plan with them. You have to try and engage the team. And eventually, I will tell you, people have to decide, do they want it enough for them? And I struggle with that because, at Walker Elliott, they're family. And I way too often want that a lot more than they do. So eventually I have to go have a talk with myself and say, am I wanting this more for the individual? And there are times that you have to part company. I don't like it when that happens, but that is the nature of managing salespeople. But it doesn't happen often here. And by and large, we have a great tenure team, which I'm very thrilled with.
Right. And so I know that motivation it goes a long way when you're in the office, and this is a people business. As much as we do it on the phone, we have to collaborate, we have to meet our clients, we have to talk to our candidates, meet with our candidates in person. But, obviously the world is changing and moving in a different direction as we kind of navigate through coronavirus at the moment. So how do you see working from home, and how will you continue to motivate your team when they are working from home?
Well, everything has changed with the coronavirus, but I've really found that management through the years is always about changing. We had to change, our style from the dialing for dollars of the 80s to how internet changed things to email and texting. And I see this as just another step in the journey that we have to change. I found some people have really surprised me at their work ethic working from home on the team, people that I would have never, that don't have that much focus here, that have really stepped up in working from home. So I think we'll have to try and find a path through. I suspect at the end of the day that some people are going to want a hybrid where they come into the office, where they can have the benefit of the resilience and the collaboration with the team, the brainstorming, that just on discussions about what's going on with our top search assignments. And then they'll want a day or two at home with just focused calling and not fighting traffic and doing that. Don't know how that will look, but I really think with this team, they're not going to want 100% work from home is the feedback that I'm getting. But we'll see. I don't know. I'm very interested to see how it unfolds.
Right. And I think that's very, again, admirable that you are open-minded to that, because you want to find the right way to motivate them and not necessarily say, like, now this has ended, I need you back in the office, because that can be somewhat demotivating because everybody feels differently about what's going on in the world.
Well, they do. But, we have so many things that we do here, like yesterday, bingo and lunch in the office. And I think those are part of what really identifies us as a team is that sense of family, that sense of community that we have here at Walker Elliott. So I want to preserve that. And I'm not quite sure how to run that balance, but it's something that will stay front and foremost with me, is how to make that balance work.
Very good. And, coming across balance is a good segue to my next question. What balance have you found when it comes to giving challenging tasks, but encouraging creativity?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think we just have to look at it every day. As you know, we've tried to be creative in our market. Sometimes we have to, you work in oil and gas desk. That means when it's red hot, and when it's not, sometimes we have to get creative and figure out how can we still be strategic without starting over. How can we expand our market? I do read. I watch the news with the work news. I try and listen to the team. And again, I think you have to really just come in and not be mentally one of those people that said, this is the way we used to do it, therefore we must always do it. And I think that's really just mental training that becomes easier over time. If you really just don't stick to that path of I always have to do it the same, then I think being creative becomes a habit. And so that's what I'd like to have here, is where creativity is a habit.
Right. And I feel very honored to be able to learn from, your 30 plus years of success. And I think many recruiters and struggling business owners and new recruiters that are starting up their firms can certainly benefit from that. And with that being said, and this being our last question, what advice do you have to the struggling managers or, search firms that are starting up?
So I think the piece of advice that I would say is that, one, you have to love the job. I still love the job at the desk. And it's hard, I think, for owners if they say, I want to manage and I want to be an owner, so I don't have to do the job at the desk. So first advice would be to make sure you love the business, you love the process, that you can celebrate small wins in the business. The other is stay close to your numbers. Know what it takes in the market. That gives you really the indication of what's going. Too often as salespeople, we just celebrate the placements, and that's the big thing. Well, placements are great, and placements make payroll, and they pay rent, and it's what we're here about. But placements represent my work ethic of the past. It doesn't represent what my future is going to be 2 months and 3 months down the road. So I would really try and stay close to your numbers. They'll never lead you astray. And then as people in the recruiting business, manage your payroll wisely. Don't get caught up. The people I see that get in trouble haven't managed their cash flow and their payroll and payroll advances. I think you really have to watch that in the recruiting business.
Very good. Well, on behalf of the Pinnacle Society, we're very honored, and thank you so much for being on the Pinnacle Perspective. And I think a lot of people will benefit, and we'll maybe even have follow-up questions, and we encourage them to reach out to you if that's the case.
Great. Thanks, Neerav. I appreciate it. You have a great day.
You do the same. Thank you.
You bet.